Layla said she's going to take every game. Every game's the same. Where it is like it's Minnesota, let's go, come on. Where do you fall in that realm? And maybe you get a little more fired up for Minnesota than you do the other teams.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain games on your schedule that you probably, as players, as coaches, I'm sure they're similar setting. Is their players get excited to play us, and we certainly get an opportunity to go up there, and you're playing meaningful games at the end of the season. So that's what in the summertime and in the early part of the season, you train, you work hard, you get in good shape, and there's certain games that I don't circle them, but the ones you get more. As a player, I used to get excited to go up and play Minnesota, and when they came down here, and that hasn't changed.
How's your club different from the last time you played?
Good question. I don't know if we're different. It just there's things that have happened between then and now, and some things that uncharacteristic when you lose 5 games in a row, and how you navigate through that, and how you try to come out of that in a positive frame of mind. And so the last 5 or 6 games have been good, and we seem to be navigating in a good direction. And now we're going to get tested this weekend. We'll get tested next weekend, and it's a great time to have a test and see what the scorecard looks like at the end of those 4 games, because then the following weekend you're in the playoffs, and then the games really become meaningful. So our freshmen are more experienced. They've been through some good weekends. They've been through some challenging times, and no different than any other freshman coming to the league. And now they get an opportunity to go up and play in a hostile environment and continue to grow as young players. And I'm anxious to see how they do. And so this time of year, you have to be dialed in. I like the way we practice today, and the focus has to be there, because there's really a small area for errors at this time of year, especially when you're playing a team, the number 1 scoring team in the country. And so you have to be paying attention to details, if you're going to have a chance to win.
You take out the USA and Canada in women's hockey, this would be the one to watch with the amount of talent that's going to be out there.
I think so. I mean, if you take the 2 games we played before Thanksgiving and look at those games, I mean, it was some good players playing at a real high level against each other, and entertaining the coaches and entertaining the people that are watching them. And so both games are going to be on TV up there, so it'll get exposed to a lot of different areas. And I'm sure history. I've been doing it for 20 years against them, and they're all pretty good games. And so I'm sure Friday night and Saturday night are going to be entertaining, and what players are going to step up and make a play to maybe make a difference in either game.
Layla and Britta both talked about how much this team has really grown, specifically off the ice, since that first series of Minnesota. From a coaching perspective, how have you seen the team kind of develop there?
Yeah, that's part of the journey of every season, where last year 10 of the players weren't on our team here last year, and so it's a space you're given, and how you navigate through it, and how you become good teammates, whether it's a good game or it's not a good game, or it's like family. You spend a lot of time together. We travel together. We see each other a lot, and some days somebody might just be grumpy because it's one of those days, and how do you deal with that? So part of becoming good teammates, and chemistry is such an important part of what we're trying to do, and what you try to do to really give yourself the best chance to win. And if everybody's on board, everybody has both feet into the boat, you can go in the same direction. That makes things a lot easier than if you have people with 1 foot in the boat, or they're not pushing in a direction, or they're thinking about themselves. So it's a process. As I sit with you today, is a lot more challenging than it was a couple of years ago, just because of the space that we're in right now with college athletics.
A little bit out of all the places you've coached, Ritter's probably second to LeBron as far as how many times you coach there. What makes that place so tough to play at?
Well, I mean, they call it the state of hockey, Minnesota, and what they've done for a long, long time. I mean, every high school has boys and women's hockey, and there's a lot of people that play the sport. They've got an NHL team, and so they like to think that hockey was born there, and they do it well. They have a lot of both male and females that play the game. They got one of the most unique sporting events in high school and anywhere in the country, with both their state women's hockey tournament for the girls and for the boys. It's something that people have tickets. They don't even live in the state, but they come back with their buddies every late in the season and watch the boys state hockey tournament. And they pack the XL Center. So it's a unique place, and you know, if you're going to have success, especially at Ritter or Mariucci, you better be playing your A game.
Mark, with this team, you kind of touched on some of your freshmen who are having a rookie year. I'm wondering, in general, is this group like a younger team than maybe some of the ones you typically have, or, and if so, how does that kind of play into how, you know, this team kind of develops and how you kind of maybe go into some of these bigger series?
No, it's probably on par with what we've had in the past. I don't have the exact date numbers, but usually you'll have 4, 5, 6 freshmen. The tough thing and the interesting thing about college athletic is, you know, you have these COVID year kids and you have these 5th year kids, and some teams might have a bunch of them and other teams might have a sprinkle of them. And so if you look at the landscape of college hockey, you know, especially in women's hockey, most teams are going to be older than they would normally be. And so, you know, you look at Minnesota, you look at Ohio State, you look at Duluth, you look at Quinnipiac, and, you know, they've got players that are 5th year players, and, you know, they get a bonus year. And so if you're an incoming freshman and you have to compete against a team that's built with a bunch of those kids, it's going to be more challenging than it would be if they weren't there. And so for a freshman, you know, you really have to look at the big picture of how you're doing against some really good teams. And our conference this year has been as strong as it's ever been, maybe the strongest that I've seen it from top to bottom. And, you know, you look at, you know, what Duluth has been able to do the last couple of years. You look at St. Cloud, we just played. You look at, you know, Mankato, what John's done up here. I mean, we've got a bunch of strong teams that it's going to be a great playoff weekend for our whole league. And, you know, whoever survives and comes out of it and gets a chance to go to the national tournament is going to be equipped and ready to play at a real high level.
And along the lines, how do you handle, like, with the, you know, the COVID years? Like, I've seen your players, like, going into their senior year, for instance, do you know, like, hey, she's going to be around for a 5th
Right,
year,
yeah.
and balancing that with, like, figuring out, like, how many scholarships you're going to offer.
Yeah, we'll be in that area for the next 2 years dealing with that. And so some universities, they won't allow, you know, people to have COVID kids or those 5th year kids. That's part of their philosophy. And so I think what we've tried to do and continue to do for the next 2 years is wait till the season's over, because then you throw in the transfer portal. And so, you know, it's like trying to put this big puzzle together. And when do I have all the pieces to put the puzzle together? And right now, that's probably not till 10, 12, 15, 2 weeks, a month after your season's over, when you get those pieces that you can put your puzzle together for the following season. So to make those decisions, we're going to wait till the end until we get as much information as we can on the pieces that we have coming back and who is that going to look like and who's going to be, because then you throw money into the equation. So you might want somebody to come back, but you don't have enough scholarships because you distribute it. So there's a lot of things that go in there, and so that's what we get decided at the end. So you want to help me? Yeah, so it's
one other thing, just real quick. So in terms of, like, flexibility, like, you have there's, like, you're not at your max of scholarship. You've got some scholarships that you got some room in your scholarship limit to work with.
won't know that till at least 10, 15 days after the season.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's like that's a part of the, you know, you're signing kids in November, and then, you know, you can't sign kids unless you have scholarships available for that class, whatever year they're coming in. So next year, so we signed our kids in November, knowing that we had scholarships available. Now, what happens at the end of the season, you know, whether it's women's hockey or men's hockey or football or basketball, I mean, you know, the first day after, you know, football gets done, you know, there's 500 people in that transfer portal. On Tuesday, there's 1,000. And so what are you going to do and how are you going to navigate? And then do you have scholarships to bring those kids, or if somebody's willing to pay to come? So there's a lot of pieces to the equation, and, you know, we can't make those decisions, and a lot of coaches can't make it till the end when you know what's actually going to happen, if that makes sense. It's just hard because, you know, I can say today one way or the other, but, you know, at the end of the season, all of a sudden, you know, my roster, things look a little bit different because, you know, every time there's an action, there's going to be a reaction. And so that's the space we're in. Yeah.